In this video I'm gonna show you how I built this the Shire underwater build. It will be a new home for my crystal red shrimps. The layout is based on the look of the Shire in Lord of the Rings with these tiny houses in the hilly landscape. The design of the landscape is slightly based on the basic concept of an Iwagumi. Okay guys, as you can see the shrimp rack is slowly growing and thriving. For this build I'm gonna use the top right aquarium. The advantage of this tank is that you can use the long side of the tank, which makes it ideal for what I wanna create today. With an edge length of 50 cm by 30 cm by 30 cm and a capacity of 45 liters or 12 gallons, the tank has a decent size for shrimps. Before I started with setting up the tank, I had to cover the highlighted glass panes with frosted glass film. That looks much better because you will not see the technical equipment, the ugly wires and hoses behind the glass anymore. So I took the tank out of the rack and attached the frosted window film. Afterwards I put the tank back in the original position and connected it to the sewage system. I don't like to see technical equipment in my tanks. That's why I always started with the positioning of the filter so that I can build the whole layout around the filter. As in most of my tanks I used a corner sponge filter. This filter is absolutely perfect for keeping shrimps. In this case the right rear corner is the way to go. I always prefer to use a protective layer if I set up escape with heavy and large stones. In this case I used an Eckrate light diffuser, which I had left over of a previous vampire crab setup. Maybe it is typical German, but I always have a better feeling if there is something between the hardscape and the bottom of the tank. Enough stereotype, let's start with setting up the tank. I wanted to create a hilly layout, and to avoid that I had to use too much costly soil, I filled in a base layer of crushed lava rocks. I absolutely love this type of material because it is ideal for the water circulation and nutrient transport in the substrate. In addition to that, the lava rock has a huge surface for beneficial bacteria due to the porous nature. After I had filled in enough crushed lava rocks, I started to place the largest stone on the eye-catcher stone. I had to use a smaller support stone because the large stone itself did not stand on its own. The stone I used for this setup is dark Sayu stone, or however you pronounce that. This type of stone can harden the water. In this case it is not a big deal because I will use a lot of soil and do water changes regularly. After some time and some trial and error I found a position that I was happy with. However, it still needed some lava rock to stabilize the large rock. Then it was time to find a suitable place for the rest of the hardscape. I added 2 medium-sized stones and of course the marble caves that are supposed to bring the Shire look into the layout. At the beginning I didn't really know what it was supposed to look like. That's why I had to play around with the hardscape for a while to get a rough idea. Then I decided that 2 additional smaller stones would be an enrichment for the layout. Finally I found a rough layout which I was happy with. Admittedly at the moment the whole thing looked even more like Mordor than the Shire, but the plants will hopefully transform the whole scape in a lush green hilly landscape. I took a photo of the layout and removed the smaller parts of the hardscape from the tank. After I had removed all the smaller elements, I filled in a coarse aqua soil. Soil is ideal for Caridina tanks because it lowers the pH to a value between 5.5 and 6.5. This is exactly the range which the most Caridina shrimps prefer. After I reached a decent height with the coarse soil, I tried to rebuild the original hardscape. Then it was time to fill in a fine-grained soil. This kind of soil is easier for planting in my opinion. You can also buy a powder soil which is even better, but in this case I only used materials which I already had at home. Then I used a sand flattener to distribute the soil as evenly as possible. And I used a brush to remove the small grains of soil from the hardscape. Finally, it was time to start the planting process. I prepared the plants and wet the soil a little bit. The first and my main plant for this scape is Hemianthus callitrichoides cuba. This is a really nice foreground or carpeting plant and the aquarium plant with the smallest leaves. It is not too easy to keep and it requires a lot of light and nutrients. CO2 injection is highly recommended. In my case, I do not have the best light in the world and I do not have CO2 injection at all. From my experience, the plant will grow, but of course it doesn't grow as optimally as it would under ideal conditions. The upper area of the scape was still a bit too empty for my taste and I still had a small beautiful stone left that fit perfectly into the layout. After what felt like 20 hours of work, all the pieces of Hemianthus were finally planted. The next plant I chose is Sorogrüne repens, a nice small foreground plant which is not too difficult to keep. In good lighting condition, this plant stays small and has a creeping growth. Afterwards I started to fill in the water into the tank. Unfortunately there was air trapped in one of the caves. The cave was floating up a little bit and pulled out some of the pieces of Hemianthus. As soon as the aquarium was filled I could start planting the background. The real Iwagumi is probably more puristic and in most cases only one kind of plant is used for a layout. I did not want to build a real Iwagumi, I just wanted to create something which is based on the idea. At least I only used one type of stone and no wood. My first choice for the background was Juncus repens. This is a grass-like plant which is easy to keep and gives the scape a wild touch. In my case it was perfect to cover the filter. In total I needed 2 pots for this. My last plant in the scape is Elaeocharis acicularis. It is also a grass-like plant, but the blades of the grass are much finer. It is more or less the big brother of the dwarf hairgrass. I planted 2 pots in the background of the tank. Finally all the plants were planted. The water looked a little bit murky. In this case it was not the substrate I had not washed. Aqua soil must not be washed before using. Now the time has come to leave the aquarium alone for approximately 2 weeks. The aquarium can of course be populated earlier with appropriate bacterial preparations. But shrimps love biofilm, and from my experience aquariums are always more stable if you give them a little bit of time to mature. So my last step was to start the filter and wait until the tank is sufficiently cycled. After approximately 2 weeks the tank was sufficiently cycled. The water was clear and the water parameters were perfect. Before I put the shrimps in, I slowly got them used to the water in the aquarium. The drip method is particularly suitable for this. In total I wanted to put in 20 shrimps to start the colony. Due to the transport, the shrimps seemed to be stressed and looked a little bit pale, but that's actually quite normal. After a few hours of acclimatization, I put the animals in their new home. Look how cool they look in the lush green landscape. Red and green are complementary colors. That means that these colors have a particularly high contrast and this combination looks really interesting for the observer. I'm really pleased with the final result. The marble caves will probably be overgrown by the Himiantos soon. I could also have covered the caves with some moss, but I did not want to use moss on this build. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If not, I'm sorry, but at least you watched to the end. If you want to see more aquascaping content like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and watch one of these videos next. Thank you for watching, have a great day and see you on the next one. Bye bye.